Challenger!
Hey, Frog Prince Rana here, and thank you for dropping by. Often I come across Flat Earth or other conspiracy videos that would make some silly claims, and then I would spend over 15 minutes giving an overall view on how that particular thing works before debunking it. Personally, I always felt it is better to understand the basic principle first. At times, it gets quite hard. The clip in question is one such instance. We have God's Flat Earth with a video titled "The Sun and the Moon are of the same size. The Earth is not a globe," with 91 likes and only 4 dislikes. I was hoping it would be some earth-shattering proof with that kind of record. The clip is around 4 minutes 28 seconds, with only the first 1 minute 30 seconds with the actual claim. The remaining is just recommended Flat Earth research material. Even that 1 minute 30 second can be a 10-second video without losing anything. Whereas the actual debunking, well, we will see. It is complicated. So let's watch the clip first. Well, I do have one question. That chariot mentioned in Book of Enoch, is it just flowery language, or are we talking about a real chariot? I'm pretty sure Indra from Hindu mythology does something similar. That being said, it is complicated. The moon always occupies roughly 0.52 angular degree on the sky. That changes by a minuscule amount between lunar cycles, with the moon's apparent size getting up to 14% larger than normal during its closest approach to Earth. It is hard to perceive with naked eye, but not entirely impossible. Whereas the sun, well, it is a completely different beast. It is growing and shrinking and growing again. Every 11 years, the sun's radius oscillates by up to 2 kilometers, shrinking when its magnetic activity is high and expanding again as the activity decreases. But that is way too small a value for us to perceive. Furthermore, Earth's orbit is not a perfect circle centered on the sun, but an ellipse. Because of this, in January, Earth is slightly closer to the Sun than in July. As the apparent size of an object is inversely related to its distance, and the Earth is 6.28 million kilometers closer to the Sun in July than in January, we can easily calculate the apparent size change, and it comes to about 4.2%. But again, due to the distance, this difference is impossible to see with the eye. Even with all that going on, there is a striking coincidence, a unique situation among our solar system's 8 planets and 166 known moons. With our moon, the sun is about 400 times as wide as the moon, but it is also 400 times farther away. This means that from Earth, the moon and the sun appear to be roughly the same size in the sky. Each planet has its own unique system of natural satellites that exist in stable orbits around it. Some moons, like Saturn's Phoebe or Neptune's Triton, are captured objects that were once comets, asteroids, or Kuiper belt. Others, like Jupiter's Ganymede or Uranus's Titania, formed from an accretion disk at the same time the planets of the solar systems formed. But our moon likely formed from an ancient giant impact. Let's backtrack a little bit. There are 4 known ways how moons are formed. First, we have moons that is from the initial material that form the objects of the solar system. This is where most of the large moons around our gas giant planet comes from. Then we have collisions between a planet and another large body in space that kicks up debris, where the material then coalesces into one or more moons around the world. Third is when objects traversing the solar system that becomes gravitationally captured by a parent planet, and finally, from material in a ring system around a planet that accelerates to form a moon all on its own. All the moons not formed from a collision are only found around gas giant worlds in our solar system. The moons that we find around smaller terrestrial worlds including Earth, Mars, and even objects like Pluto, Eris, and Haumea are all consistent with their moons arising from one source and one source alone. Ancient impacts between a large, massive, fast-moving body and the major world itself. We have an enormous suite of evidence to support it. The Apollo missions returned samples of the lunar surface to Earth, where analysis confirmed that the material composing the moons and the Earth's crust have a common origin. Measurements of the composition and orbital parameters of Mars' moon not only point to their creation from an impact, but indicate that a third, larger inner moon was created and has since fallen back to Mars. And most recently, measurements by New Horizons supports that Charon, Pluto's giant moon, originated from a giant impact as well. So what are the odds that an Earth-like planet to have a moon that's approximately the same angular size as the Sun, as seen from the same planet? What do we know so far? To get a moon around a rocky planet like Earth is to have some sort of giant impact in the planet's past. With our current technology, we haven't so far been able to detect moon around rocky exoplanets. Of the rocky planets in our solar system, Mercury and Venus have no moons, while Mars, 2 surviving moons, both appear much smaller than the Sun. Our moon orbits our planet in almost exactly the same plane that the Earth rotates on its axis. Another piece of evidence that points to Earth and Moon having a common origin from a giant impact. When the Moon happens to pass directly between the Earth and the Sun, and all 3 bodies are perfectly aligned, we experience a phenomena known as solar eclipse. This is common to all worlds with moons that cross the planet-Sun plane, but Earth and our Moon are quite unique. We experience 3 different types of solar eclipse. We have total solar eclipse, where the Moon appears to entirely block out the disk of the Sun. Then annular solar eclipse, where the Moon fails to block out the Sun's disk and creates an annulus of visible Sun circumscribing the eclipsing Moon. Finally, we get hybrid solar eclipse, where the Moon fails to block the entire Sun for a portion of the eclipse but does successfully block the entire Sun for a different portion. Earth only experiences all 3 types of solar eclipse because the Moon, in its elliptical orbit around the Earth, can appear either large or smaller than the Sun due to Earth's elliptical orbit around the Sun. This is no doubt a rarity. neither of Mars' moon is ever large enough to eclipse the Sun totally, as every eclipse from Mars is annular. But if Mars did have a third, larger inner moon at one point, its eclipses would have always been total eclipses. Annular or hybrid eclipses would have been impossible. Our solar system, as far as we can reconstruct, tells a tale of an ever-changing relationship between the Earth, Moon, and the Sun. It began some 4.5 billion years ago, where our ancient protoplanetary disk, which gave rise to all the planets, began to fragment into clumps that grew, interacted, and both merged and ejected one another. There are two types of survivors: large, massive planets that held on to hydrogen and helium envelopes, and smaller, less decisive victors, which became planets and dwarf planets. These early planets, planetoids and planetemissions, interact and sometimes collide, and those collisions tend to kick up larger amounts of debris that surrounding the major planet. Most of that material winds up falling back to the parent planet, while the rest coalesces into one or more moons. In general, the innermost moon will be the largest and most massive, and then some smaller, less massive moons that can exist at greater distances. These moons exert differential force on the planet. They gravitationally attract the portion of the planet that's closer to the moon with a greater force than the portion that's farther away. Apart from causing tides on the planet, it also causes the main planet to slow its rotation and the moon to spiral away from the planet. The planet atmospheres can also create a drag force on the moon, drawing it closer to the planet. Depending on how the moons are initially formed, either effect can win. For Mars, the drag force appears to have won, drawing the innermost moon in. Over time, the next moon, Phobos, will eventually fall back onto Mars as well. In the case of Pluto, tidal braking is complete, and the Pluto-Charon system is now a binary planet, where both are tidally locked to one another, surrounded by 4 additional outer, smaller moons. The current thought is, around 4 billion years ago, the moon was very close to the Earth, and there may have been a number of smaller outer moons beyond our own, with Earth completing a complete rotation in just 6 to 8 hours. But over time, the tidal friction of the moon slowed that rotation tremendously, an act which transfers angular momentum from the spinning Earth to the orbit of the moon. Over time, this causes the moon to spiral away from the Earth. For billions of years, until only a few hundred million years ago, the moon was close enough for all of the solar eclipses on Earth to be total eclipses. As tidal interaction caused the moon to spiral about 1 inch per year away from Earth, soon enough, and that soon, being in cosmological time, in millions of years' time, Earth will experience its final total solar eclipse, and in another 50 to 80 million years, its final hybrid solar eclipse. After that, all of Earth's solar eclipses would be annular. So what we're experiencing today? It is just a happy coincidence. To us, it is magnificent that we get to enjoy it, and that is it. If we were having this conversation couple of 100 million years ago, it would not be the case. There would have been no such coincidence, and the question would have never arisen. We just happen to live in the brief period of Earth's history when the moon just barely blocks the sun. Robert Ney from astronomy.com sums it up nicely by saying, "Indeed, the odds against it are enormous, but the universe is a large enough place so that highly improbable coincidence can and do occur." Think of a simple deck of cards, one of my favorite items. Out of nearly 2.6 million poker hands, only 4 of them are royal flushes. Basically, that means the probability of a royal flush is 4 over 2,598,960 or 1 over 649,740 hands. Just to put that into perspective, if you were to play 20 hands of poker every day of the year, it would take you over 89 years to be dealt around 650,000 hands. And you should expect to see only one royal flush. But people do get royal flush. The chance of winning a lottery is astronomical, and yet many people win the lottery at the very first time, simply because there are perhaps millions of poker hands played around the globe every day. Millions of people play the lottery, and thus highly improbable coincidence can and do occur. Now, some smart flat earthers do bring unified field theory and claim that it means the sun and moon are the same size from Earth because that is an equilibrium terrestrial orbit. Thankfully, so far I haven't seen any YouTube flat earther make that argument. Oh dear, did I just give them an idea? Fear not. I'm pretty sure none of them would ever watch the video till this end to find out about UFT. This is where I'll end the video. Do you see how a silly 90 seconds video takes me maybe over 15 minutes to explain? This is why debunking is hard for me. If you have enjoyed this content, please like, comment and share it around. If you think it is worthwhile, please do consider subscribing. It will help me bring more contents to you. Thank you for watching. Wherever you are, have a safe day. Signing off.